Hi, good morning to everyone. Maybe you could be seated, please. Thank you. All right. Very good morning to everyone. Welcome all of you to the 56th Council meeting. Next 3 days, we will reflect what kind of challenges we are facing in terms of global environment, and we can reflect together what kind of things we can do together. So let me start by reflecting on the challenges that we are facing. I recall at the last council meeting in December, we touched upon the IPCC 1.5 degree report, which pointed to the scale and magnitude, the speed of the climate crisis, and which urged us to take the total transformation at almost every aspect of economy and society. The report also told us that we have only 12 years to bend the curve. Last month, IPBES painted another very worrisome picture. We are losing the biodiversity at 100 or even 1,000 times much higher than natural rate. Out of 8 million plant and animal species on Earth, 1 million are threatened with extinction. These concerns were echoed by the Global Environment Outlook published by UN Environment. It concluded that a major species extinction event is unfolding, which compromises planetary integrity and Earth's capacity to meet human needs. Importantly, both reports point to the same main causes of degradation and biodiversity loss, namely our food and land use system and the associated habitat destruction and pollution. Global Chemical Outlook tells us that hazardous chemicals and other pollutants, such as plastic waste and pharmaceutical products, continue to be released in large quantities, highlighting the need to avoid future legacies through sustainable materials management and circular business model. My takeaway from those reports is that science provides us with the crystal clear message that the natural world is under attack. We humans have pushed the carrying capacity of the planet Earth to their limits. Unless we change urgently the way we live, we will lose the favorable Earth conditions that are the very foundation of our own prosperity. I am very pleased that during this meeting, we will have an opportunity to hear directly from science. In addition to our usual inputs from staff, I am delighted that Bob Watson, the outgoing chair of IPBES, has agreed to brief us over lunch today. While the challenge is daunting, the good news is that the momentum to respond to these challenges is also growing. I have two observations of the recent response. First, at the international level, nature is rising on the agenda. A few weeks ago, I had an opportunity to attend the G7 Environment Ministers meeting in France. Also this coming weekend, I will attend the G20 Environment Ministers meeting. Similarly, back in April, Canada hosted a Nature Champions Summit. Then the last week, I spent a few days in China at the CCICED, where the nature is a very important topic ahead of the preparation of their 14th five-year plan. What is really interesting to me throughout those international meetings is that they clearly recognize that challenge is not only climate change anymore, that nature is really looming as the major topic, So it's a very broad set of the environment, not only climate, but the nature, the biodiversity loss, the marine plastic, the circular economy, so to speak. So that these nature agenda are really being pushed to the center stage of the discussion. My second observation from the recent response is that the very strong engagement by non-state actors. A number of multi-stakeholder coalitions among business, the government, CSOs, and academia are emerging and are ramping up their activities. For instance, Food and Land Use Coalition and TFA 2020 are working very hard to transform our food system to make sure that we do not deforest the tropical rainforest anymore. There are several other active coalitions on the circular economy, plastic, and e-waste. And yesterday I was very excited to see that a lot of discussion on the marine plastic at the CSO consultation and joined by the government and the business and the CSOs. Also that there are alliance among mayors working on the sustainable cities. And there is an interesting theme coming up these days, so-called the New Deal for Nature, thinking ahead of COP15 in 2020. What kind of a coalition can be made among the business, the CSOs, the government, and the communities? So there are a lot of interesting activities ongoing. Then the question for us at this group is, what is our role in it? As you know, with the encouragement by partners and in response to message from science, we at the GEF have been evolving our strategy for the past few years. GEF 2020, which was adopted by this council in 2014, shifted the focus of our strategy from symptom to causes or drivers of environmental degradation. It takes transformation or the system change as a centerpiece of our efforts to maximize impact, and we take the integration as an effective way of delivery. And we emphasize the importance of taking multi-stakeholder approach, given that no single actor can catalyze system change. So in this context, I'm quite excited to present our work program to this council. This will be the single largest work program, if approved, in the history of the GEF, which covers 90 countries with 30 LDCs and another 30 small island states. This directly addresses the need presented by the recent scientific reports, meaning the need for transformational change in the key economic systems. So the centerpiece to this work program, one of them are the impact program, which are set out to bring countries and the business, CSOs, the community together to address the driver of environmental destruction, and not just its symptoms. Food and Land Use program is meant for transforming food and land use system, which is identified as the major cause of biodiversity loss by IPBES and other scientific reports. I just want to share with you my own experience of formulating this impact program. Since that at Danan, where the GEF 7 programming direction was approved, I have had several opportunities to visit countries and the communities to really listen to and discuss on how the impact program can be formulated. And I was really excited to see a lot of new movement coming from on the ground. I just want to maybe share with you that then I see the major challenge was actually to put environmental minister and the agriculture minister together on the same topic. It usually doesn't happen, but it happened on several countries, very recently in Peru during my visit. Then I see a lot of movement and the efforts to bring the national government and local government together, because in many cases the immediate action are delivered by local government, while the national framework is provided by national government. I see a lot of efforts to bring the business sector and the government together. That is absolutely needed, and they know each other. That they know that need to come together. Then I was very moved to see that the many business and the government emphasize the role of smallholder farmers. Without their lasting prosperity, there is no lasting impact of the program. So these are kind of a challenge and opportunities and movement on the ground. And I would say the real value of those impact programs to really try to catalyze system change is those movement on the ground, which we convene, the impact program convene going ahead. So that then, and I was also very happy to see that then, and you will see it this afternoon, that then as promised, those impact program actually are delivering, if they really realize their what they are promised, much bigger results, the much more impact per dollar. So this is another value of that benefit of having impact program. So that then, so in addition to those impact programs, there are a very exciting other program, the projects in this work program. That there is a CIS and a chemical platform. They also have a global wildlife program. And I just also want to emphasize that in addition to this big and very well balanced and exciting work program, that GEF has been really working hard to strengthen our institutional framework. You may recall at the last council meeting, we have done a lot of homework to strengthen our institutional framework and in terms of policy and delivery. But we will continue our effort also at this council, so that we will discuss several policy papers to strengthen our institutional and the delivery mechanism. As usual, we will also hear from the IEO, who give us the pointers about where additional improvements may be made. In addition to that, during the lunchtime tomorrow, Mopan will share with us their findings of their assessment of the GEF. So, going forward, I feel the challenge is becoming bigger and bigger, but at the same time, our ability to address those challenges is also becoming stronger. And we have more scientific knowledge. We come to know more about what works and what doesn't work on the ground. And we have now more champions in the government, political sphere, business leaders, CSOs, and the communities. So that we just need to capitalize those kind of momentum coming from the ground. We are heading for the super year 2020 with the CBD COP in China, where the post-IT framework needs to be agreed, with climate COP, where the Paris agreement will be reviewed and the NDCs to be updated, and with the UN Ocean Conference taking place. We have quite a historic opportunity to come together to make a difference to us and in 2020. This may be the last chance to change the course. I'm quite thrilled to say that we, the GEF, are the part of those efforts and movements. As I am looking ahead to my last year as the CEO of the GEF, I'm very proud to say that we have come quite a long way. In 2014, the Council adopted the vision of GEF 2020 for the higher impact. It was the vision, but now we are implementing a set of the most integrated and system-oriented strategy. And in all of this, the importance of involving and collaborating with key actors and the government, cities, the private sector, CSO, and the communities cannot be underestimated. I'm very pleased with what we have accomplished so far, but I also want to be absolutely clear that there is no room for complacency for us. There is still a lot to be done, and I look forward to putting all my energy into that in the coming year together with you. Let's have a good deliberation for the coming days, and let's now get on our business together. Thank you so much. So let's move on to the next agenda item. It's a election of my co-chair. The last council meeting that you have selected Mr. Abdul Salim from Sierra Leone as my co-chair. So this is the turn to elect a co-chair from developed countries. I would like to seek the nomination from this table. Peter, please.
Good morning, Naoko. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, Secretariat staff, IO staff, staff, CSOs and agencies. It's a pleasure to be here and back in Washington for this landmark meeting, Naoko, as the GEF media release said. I would like to respond to your offer and with great pride would like to nominate my colleague and our colleague, Carola van Rijnsover, to co-chair this important meeting. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Peter. Is there any voice of support? Thank you.
Good morning.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, sorry. Good morning, everyone, and it's nice to be the second opinion, and Mongolia and our constituency is supporting the nomination. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Arya. With that, I think that Carola is elected as my co-chair for next 3 days. Thank you so much. Carola, please come to the main table. Thank you, Carola. I think that now you are on the spot for your first job on the agenda item 3, which is?
Good morning, everyone. Very happy and honored to be here in the co-chair seat for these few days. We're now moving on to the next item on our agenda, which is the adoption of the agenda that has been distributed to all of you. Kindly like to hear if anyone has any remarks to the agenda. I don't see anyone asking for the floor. If anyone has any issues under any other business to raise, please flag this now. If not, then we would consider the agenda as adopted. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So let's move on to the next agenda item, which is the policy on monitoring. I'd like to ask that Françoise and the team to come and present the paper.
Thank you, Chair. And good morning, everybody. It is a pleasure to be with you today and to start our first item. This concerns the policy on monitoring. In November 2010, the Council approved a then revised version of monitoring and evaluation policy for the GEF. Since then, of course, as you know, the GEF, the partnership in general, its strategy, its policies, its guidelines have evolved, and there is a need to review and update the principles and requirements that guide monitoring and evaluation. To that end, the document posted proposed a policy on monitoring for Council consideration. The policy has been prepared by the Secretariat in consultation with stakeholders across the GEF partnership. It would supersede the provisions of the 2010 monitoring and evaluation policy in the part that pertains to monitoring. Other elements of the policy would be then superseded by a proposed evaluation policy prepared by IEO, which will be presented tomorrow. So what are the key changes between the proposed policy and the 2010 policy? Essentially, 4 of them. There's an alignment with the GEF 7 results architecture, which introduced new core indicators, sub-indicators, and associated monitoring and reporting requirements. Second major change, there's clear reporting requirements for programs and for the small grants program in the new policy. Third, there are clear time standards for project and program level reporting in order to enable enhanced portfolio management and downstream reporting. And fourth, there's an enhanced disclosure of non-confidential monitoring documents and data on the GEF website. The policy is designed to complement rather than duplicate or substitute other recent GEF policies that also have set out requirements for project, program, and portfolio monitoring and reporting, including recently adopted policies in the past 2 years on gender equality, on stakeholder engagement, on environmental and social safeguards, and on co-financing. As to effectiveness date, the Secretariat proposes that the policy come into effect on July 1st, 2019 for new projects, and a year later, on the 1st of July 2020, for projects currently under implementation, where some changes in practice are involved. To support the effective implementation of the policy, the Secretariat would update and develop publicly available and easily accessible templates and guidelines. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Françoise. Now I would like to open the floor for your comments and questions. Kamlan, please.
Alors, merci.
Thank you. Thank you kindly, and I should like to congratulate Carola for having been designated as co-chair. Good morning, everyone. Now, as regards the coastal countries of West Africa, we are very pleased of this initiative, and we welcome it, especially with respect to the monitoring report and its application. The Secretariat, all the partners of the GEF, and of course the fact that it will be executed next month. Now, We want to note, however, that there are a number of prescriptions in this new policy, and there is not enough involvement foreseen for the recipient countries of GEF, and therefore they should be more integrated in the quality of the reports, especially with respect to monitoring reports and monitoring and evaluation. So for the countries that I represent here today, it would be useful to specify that monitoring reports, including all other sorts of reports, related reports, should also go through focal points and for review by the focal points in order for the focal points to provide feedback to the Secretariat as to the report. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Roland from Norway, please.
Thank you very much. We would first of all like to thank the Secretariat for this new policy. We are very pleased that the GEF Secretariat will finally be reporting on actual results in addition to expected results. We think this is a major improvement and going in the right direction. We would also like to note the conclusions from the MOPEN review on the issue of monitoring and reporting, which we will get back to. We would also like to thank the Secretariat for having organized a working group on this issue, and we are pleased that the working group will be continuing its work. We believe that the issue of monitoring is closely linked to the issue of evaluation, so we would like to suggest inviting the Independent Evaluation Office to join the working group on monitoring. We would also like to suggest that the MOPEN review be one of the issues discussed in a future meeting of the working group. During the telephone conference we had in the working group, our constituency made several comments on the draft policy. We realized that a lot of our comments were not taken into account in this version of the policy, so we would like to make some points here. We believe that the use of the monitoring results information should be more important. It should be used for learning, for adaptation, and for knowledge management. This is also something that the MOPEN notes. We believe that it's not sufficient to address these issues in the evaluation policy. The reporting templates, for example, should include a section on lessons learned. And the policy that we have in front of us should also indicate how monitoring and results information will be used beyond the project and the agency level for learning and management and for the GEF-funded projects. We had also made a comment on the issue of reporting at the portfolio level. We do not see in this policy how monitoring will be done at the portfolio level and how the results at that level will be communicated to the Council, for example. Will it be an aggregated reporting on results? Will it be focused on the focal areas or at the regional level, countries level? We would like some more information on that. We note that the annual reports will contain information on expected results in addition to achieved results. That's very good, but we would like to make sure that the annual reports distinguish very clearly between what are expected and what are achieved results. We note that guidelines and forms will be developed in order for the agencies to report in terms of this new policy, and we are very supportive of that, and we would like to make sure that also the agencies are held accountable and are reporting when they're supposed to. Finally, we would like to suggest that the Council look at the policy once we have received a new annual type of report to see if there would be any changes that would be needed to be done in the policy based on what is contained in the annual report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lashina, followed by Marita.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to thank the working group and the GEFSEC for this policy on monitoring. However, I have a few points that I would like to highlight. We note that at paragraph 14, the GEFSEC would update and develop publicly available and easily accessible templates and guidelines. We would like to know the timeline by which these templates and guidelines will be made available, the more so that the effective date of this monitoring policy is the 1st July 2019. Second, while we agree that there should be monitoring for projects at all levels, FSPs, MSPs, enabling activities, we would like that the guidelines and template developed should be simplified for enabling activities compared to full-size project, given that enabling activities are small projects with short duration, and we don't want a lot of resources going towards heavy monitoring for enabling activities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to call Marita, followed by Leonardo. Marita, please.
Thank you, Co-Chair. We welcome the policy and support the proposal, which goes in the right direction. I think I don't have to read all my points because Lauren explained very well what we also wanted to say. So I fully support all the points that she made. Thank you.
Thank you. Very efficient. May I call on Leonardo, followed by Adriana.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you kindly, Madam Chair. I should like to speak in French. First and foremost, this is my first council meeting, and I should like to thank you kindly for the efforts that you deploy within GEF. And for France, GEF is an essential tool, especially within the ecosystem of CIFs and in climate funds, as well as in terms of efforts to be deployed against the degradation of biodiversity. Now, with respect to the monitoring policy here, we find the document very clear as to its objectives and as to the reports that are expected of execution and implementing agencies. So we support this policy. We would also welcome the willingness to have greater transparency in the policies, especially when we want to publish a number of monitoring reports on the GEF's internet website. We have a question, however, which has to do with monitoring reports. We have noted that there would be a report on an annual basis given to the Council. However, we would like to better understand what the GEF Secretariat is considering in terms of notifying any difficulty that takes place within a project or on the field. We'd like to know if those cases would be dealt with in terms of other policies or whether you have a procedure within this monitoring procedure or report, in which case we have not really been able to clearly identify the process or the channel through which this would take place. And so we would like to have some specifications by the Secretariat on this item. Thank you kindly.
Thank you so much. Now, Adriana, followed by Chaibo. Microphone, please.
Sorry. Good morning. I'm going to speak in Spanish.
First of all, we would truly like to thank you. We are very pleased with this policy. We believe it will allow us to have greater transparency. And we also think that it was due time to update this policy. We only have a very small request. The constituency of Brazil, Colombia, and Ecuador believes that evaluations and monitoring of programs should actively involve key stakeholders, especially government institutions. Even though we see here that the Secretariat will disseminate through the website the updated information on the reports, evaluations, and monitoring, as long as they're not publicly available, still operational focal points should have access to that official information without any restriction, including before this information is published in the website, in order to be able to follow up on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Chaibo, followed by Maruta.
Merci.
Thank you. I should first and foremost like to congratulate you, Madam Chair and Madam Co-Chair, as to the document and the policy, the monitoring policy and its implementation. This is well done. This has been very well done, and we appreciate that. We also welcome the idea according to which the IEO would also be working side by side with this committee. And we believe that this policy should first and foremost show what the GEF contributes. Not necessarily with respect to the focal points, but especially with respect to expectations and objectives of sustainable development and other commitments, such as the Paris agreements. This policy should help us demonstrate the way the GEF contributes to realizing and achieving these objectives. And a number of countries which have not been actually specified in the document should perhaps be also mentioned, just as my colleague from Togo has said, the role of key actors, such as implementing agencies or focal points. Focal points also carry out quite a lot of coordination work with the project portfolio. We're talking about a new portfolio and therefore new countries, and that is very important. We wish these countries to be specified clearly. This would be good. Now, the templates, as well as guidelines, there we also need to have these developed as soon as possible. As you well know, we don't have that much time left. And so countries together should be able to organize themselves and coordinate their various project portfolios in order for this policy to be better implemented. Thank you.
Thank you so much. May I call on Martha from Peru, followed by Wenson.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. First of all, the constituency of Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, Paraguay, and Peru, that is the Southern Cone constituency, would like to thank you for organizing this 56th Council meeting and congratulate Carola for being appointed co-chair. With regard to the monitoring policy, our constituency agrees with the proposed decision, and we wish to emphasize that even though it's important that implementation reports and midterm reviews and final assessments of projects carried out by agencies be published in GEF website, it is essential that focal points be informed by the agencies and be able to participate in evaluation procedures, and that this rather be part of the steps aimed at improving the involvement of focal points throughout the project cycle. We should recall that the document challenges to improve coordination and working flow within the GEF partnership, which is Council Document 55, states that focal points responsibilities is to be fully informed by agencies and by the GEF Secretariat on the projects, their development, implementation, and cooperate with evaluation and monitoring at the level of projects, programs, and portfolio. Finally, our constituency would also like to say that it welcomes the launching, that is a prompt launching of the online GEF portal, which will allow us to truly strengthen our activities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. May I call on Wenson, followed by Marjolaine.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. We also welcome the idea and the initiative to update the evaluation and monitoring policies, and we congratulate you on this excellent job. We would like to take this opportunity to make the following two comments. The first comment, as a lot of other chairs have mentioned, the evaluation and monitoring involves different actors such as the Secretariat, the IEO, the implementing agencies, and also the recipient countries, including the focal point. So it is our view as well that the different actors should deliver on their responsibilities according to the TOR with a view to ensuring that the review and monitoring and evaluation can reach the expected targets of the policies. The second comment is that we have the particular idea of emphasizing on the monitoring and evaluation of the impact programs, because it is our view that it is important to have a comprehensive monitoring and taking good stock of the value addition of the impact programs, because by doing so, we can provide knowledge and experience for the future implementation of these impact programs. Thank you, Co-Chair.
Thank you. May I call on Marceline, followed by Stefan?
Thank you, Chair. Well, we align very much with everything more or less what has been said around the table. We welcome the policy and especially the fact that it's aligned to the GEF 7 results architecture. And of course, we would like to see also the clear link to the evaluation policy, which we are discussing tomorrow. As useful evaluations and learning can only be done on the basis of solid results. And in that case, I would also like to join Lauren, especially on the relation with the learning aspect and the taking into account the results of the MOPAN. We are also in agreement that it would be very useful to know in the annual reports what have been the achieved results versus what are the expected results, so that we are able to report to our Parliament on the achieved results as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Now may I call on Stefan, followed by Anna.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Congratulations to Carola and welcome to all the new colleagues on the Council and the other participants. You know, a full house. So good to see that. There's a big interest. We welcome this and support the adoption of this new policy on monitoring. It is one of the key elements of the policy recommendations of GEF 7 replenishment and outcome. We can associate ourselves with comments made, particularly one on achieved versus expected results. And in addition, we would have 2 points that we would like to raise here. We are a bit concerned about the potential significant overlap between information requested from agencies and the terminal evaluation report and the information requested in the tracking tool regarding the achieved results. So have you thought through, I assume so, but we didn't see it as spelled out in the document, how to reduce the reporting burden, yet still keep the reports meaningful. And the last point is a minor one. It is proposed that the policy will enter into force on July 1st. That's very soon. Swift entry into force is good. We assume that all the agencies have been consulted on that and that they are also ready to comply with this very short deadline. Thank you.
Thank you. May I call on Anna from Canada, followed by Peter from Australia.
Thank you very much, and good morning, colleagues. We welcome this document and are pleased to see that the GEF is beginning to monitor and report on actual results achieved in addition to expected results, and believe that these efforts are moving in the right direction. We share many of the points that have been raised thus far, including the important point raised by Norway on having more information at the portfolio level and that being reported to the Council. Like Norway and the Netherlands, we wanted to highlight the issue of learning. In the introduction to the policy, it states that one of its key objectives is to improve learning, and we would welcome additional information on how this will be achieved. We'd like to see the policy strengthen its approach to learning during the project implementation phase and not just at the terminal evaluation phase. We'd also like to note that in our view, expected results or outcomes should be identified before deciding how to measure them, rather than having indicators drive results. And so in that regard, we'd appreciate more information from the Secretariat to elaborate on the GEF's approach to this. Thank you.
Thank you. May I call on Peter, followed by civil society.
Thank you, Naoko. And now you're in the chair. Carola, congratulations on your election as our co-chair. We're in safe hands, I'm confident. I'd first just like to note that comments that I'll be making, unless otherwise stated, represent the constituency of Australia, New Zealand and Republic of Korea, and grateful to colleagues for their support preparing for this meeting. On the policy, I am happy to add my voice to those who have supported this, the construct of the policy. We were interested and took part in the working group, and I think the simplest thing to do to make this short is to say that we can wholly support the comments that Lauren mentioned earlier in this item. A couple of small specifics. I think the important to focus on outcome-focused monitoring systems, where there are robust program theories needed so we know what we're monitoring progress against. I'd echo those who've asked for clarification on whether the policy applies to projects submitted under the June work programme, given the start date is for implementation is after we agree those on 1 July. In addition, just interested to know whether non-grant instruments, the non-grant instrument programme, will also be covered by this, and if so, which I presume it will be, maybe that should be stated explicitly in the policy. Also, noting that later in the meeting we'll be talking about the evaluation policy. I think it's critical that the monitoring policy clearly outlines the expectation that these two policies will be well aligned. There will be coherence between the two, and we should be careful of adding an unsustainable burden on our implementing agencies and on our recipient countries in particular, where there are distinct capacity constraints by the development of two freestanding policies. So a coherence between the two is important. And also just to echo the more recent comments, particularly from Anna, I think, on the learning aspects. Learning and improvement is an important function of any M&E policy as a learning institution. So we'd be keen to get a sense from the Secretariat at this stage how any M&E data, or data, depending on your accent, may be used by the Secretariat for learning across the partnership. Thank you.
Thank you. May I call on civil society, followed by Liz from US.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for inviting the CSOs to make comments at this stage on the statements. The monitoring is, we give high importance to monitoring in the CSO network. On behalf of the GEF CSO network, I'd like to acknowledge the significant progress made on the policy on monitoring. We have reviewed the document and would recommend some improvements. I won't mention them all, but I'll highlight a few. In the introduction, we feel it is important to make regular, in each replenishment, reviews, revisions, and updates on the principles and requirements in this policy. Also, there need to be defined roles and responsibilities to ensure accountability in the GEF finance projects and programs in this policy, as per paragraph 7. And in the guiding principles, what I'd like to mention is, again, the monitoring and evaluation plan should be included, should include a timeline of planning, monitoring, and evaluation activities, a budget, roles, and responsibilities. Disclosure should be made at least 4 weeks in advance, consistent with minimum requirements specified in the evaluation policy. Finally, the CSO network aims to play a meaningful role in the GEF architecture, and this includes monitoring. We would strongly recommend the GEF to form or restructure technical working groups focusing on the GEF focal areas where the CSO representatives can actively take part in learning and sharing. Technical working group members from the CSOs can be great assets at country levels to better help the relevant sector government ministries. We suggest that the Independent Evaluation Office set monitoring and evaluation indicators accordingly to make it a process rather than having be a single event. We believe that the recommended improvements will serve as agents of transformation to materialize the new vision approved by the Council and recommendations made by the Independent Evaluation Office. Thank you, and I'd like Chair to add some comments.
Thank you, Madam. Just one more point to add. Relating to the impact programs, so we understand the impacts we can see after the project period. So in the current monitoring mechanism, there is no opportunity to measure the level of impacts made by a project. So it is, as yesterday we have discussed about the resilience that begins after the project life. So we would like to request Independent Evaluation Office to come out with specific scorecards that gives us 6 disaggregated baseline so that we can quantify the level of progress, level of impact made at the target areas. That can also include economic analysis so that we can quantify the benefit, what is the level of impact, because environmental impact, social impact, other impacts, along with economic benefit, that should be reflected. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you so much. May I call on Ritz, followed by Kojura.
Thank you very much and good morning. We would also like to express our support for the changes, particularly the enhanced transparency elements. In addition, we are very much in alignment with what other colleagues have said, but in particular would like to echo our French colleague's point regarding what happens if monitoring reveals implementation problems. In such scenarios, what steps could the GEF take to address the issue? Also, how does the Secretariat intend to monitor agencies' compliance with this new policy, and are updates required to the document monitoring agencies' compliance with the GEF policies? Many thanks.
Thank you. Now Kojura, followed by Apana.
Thank you and good morning. Well, I would like to join the others in welcoming the updated monitoring policy and the related strengthening of monitoring and reporting requirements at project and program level. I understand that this is the instrument that will help us to also ensure the alignment with the GEF 7 results architecture, which you probably remember is one of the points very dear to Germany, especially some areas we are very interested in. So I wonder how the report about the monitoring results will give us the possibility to assess the achievement of the different targets and how we will deal with these results within the Council once we get them. And especially, certainly also for the share on climate investments, and what instruments we have available to apply readjustments if we realize that the targets are not being met. And then there's just one question for understanding. Apparently there have been changes in the disclosure and information section of the policy, and we just want to understand what has changed and how it has been changed.
Okay. Thank you so much. May I call on Apana, followed by Ben.
Forgot how to use this. So thank you, Naoko, and welcome to our new co-chair. from Netherlands, and also to all the new members present here and the House. So first of all, I would like to thank the Secretariat for preparing a very clear-cut policy, and we especially welcome the key features, and we are hopeful that you will be able to apply it with the effectiveness from July 1st, and also the guiding principles. We make the following comments to improve the strength of the policy as a tool, management tool, and a tool for the Council. So the first point we would like to make is about the guiding principles, and I believe that we would benefit from the articulation of two items, one which has been mentioned, which is gender disaggregated data. I think it would be good to mention it somewhere in the policy, possibly in the guiding principles. And number two, somewhere we talk, especially when you are speaking of data quality and standards, about the need to have baseline data and to utilize and strengthen country systems. So if this could be included in the guiding principles, I believe it will enrich the policy. The second issue, which again has been mentioned, is that we must be sure of the impact on administrative cost, both for the implementing agency as well as for the Secretariat, in collating, publishing, and monitoring the data, and whether there is going to be any impact, if so, how it will be absorbed. The third point which I want to make, which has been made by my colleagues around the table, is that we are extremely disappointed at the complete absence of the mention of recipient countries and the OFPs in particular. My serious request is that we do not adopt this policy till we are able to see the reference to the role and responsibilities of the operational focal points specifically. I would urge that the role in channelizing the data to the Secretariat from the lead agency or the implementing agencies should be clearly spelled out in respect of projects in para 12 to 23 and in respect of programs from para 25 to 31. I, for one, am willing to wait for the revised policy document till tomorrow to finally adopt it. And lastly, in terms of administrative cost, we would like to understand how we will use an online system for feeding in the data regularly, collating it, and publishing it so that it is accessible to all stakeholders. This, we believe, will also reduce the administrative cost, improve timeliness of data, and allow us to analyze data as it becomes available for better inputs to the Council for understanding the impact of the programs. And lastly, we also support the points made about how it will affect the learning from the projects going forward. We appreciate the achieved versus expected targets and the impact. Thank you so much.
Thank you. May I call on Ben, followed by Mr. Nomura.
Many thanks, Naoko. I'll try to be brief, as I think many of these points have been made already. Just to say that we're happy to see the separation of the policies of monitoring and evaluation, and like others, we support this policy overall. I think it's good to see reference in the report in reporting on achieved results. Just a couple of small issues to clarify and address. I think we very much agree with other chairs on the points being made in terms of ensuring there's a clear distinction between the reporting of expected and achieved results. And then the second point, just to support the point made by my US colleague in asking what action the Secretariat takes when an implementing agency is not meeting the minimum monitoring standards. Many thanks.
Thank you so much. May I call on Munenali, followed by Kalina.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. First, I'd like to thank the staff for presenting to us the proposal on the monitoring policy. This is a very important policy for the effective implementation of the GEF and the GEF programs. And I'd like to join the previous speakers in supporting this proposal. But two questions. Two comments. First one is It's, if I understand correctly, under this policy, the Secretariat is expected to monitor the GEF portfolio on a continuous basis and report to the Council on any issues that require the Council's attention. And in this regard, I'd like to encourage the Secretariat to promptly report to the Council if it finds any problem in the GEF portfolio. That's my first point. My second point is about the reporting deadline set for agencies. I understand that the deadline is now set for the no later than 75 calendar days after the end of each fiscal year. And I'd like to know how the Secretariat arrived at this deadline. And I'd like to know, in particular, I'd like to know whether the Secretariat has checked with the practice of other similar international organizations. Thank you.
Thank you. May I call on Kalina, followed by Vladislav.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Everybody, on behalf of our constituency, comprised by Central America, Mexico, and Venezuela, we welcome this policy and would like to congratulate the Secretariat and the working group on developing this policy. It is an important step towards enhancing accountability and transparency of GEF results through an evidence-based approach. We would like to request the Secretariat clarification on how the guidelines and templates to support the effective implementation of the policy will be developed, and we request to make it available to the focal points for their review and comments before publishing it. Thank you.
Thank you. May I call on Vladislav, followed by Ludwika.
Good morning, dear colleagues. Nice to see all of you again, and I wish fruitful work to everyone in this council meeting. With regard to policy on monitoring, I would like to thank Secretariat for completion and on that document and including all previous amendments from 54th council meeting. But I would like to draw attention on the stage of agencies reporting, and on my opinion, and as well as my constituency opinion, it should be include some points with regard focal points approval stage before submitting a report to the Secretariat. Besides provision envisaged in practical steps to improve coordination and workflow in the GEF partnership. That step will make more clear relation and understanding with regards project implementation and fulfillment of agencies task in line of realization project target. And in that sense, I support comments made by Marta from Peru and Aparna from India that focal points approval stage should be in reports. Thank you.
Thank you so much. May I call on Ludwika, followed by Marta.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to the Secretariat for the paper. I will try to be very brief since I'm one of the last, maybe the last, and I can pick up what other speakers said before. First of all, let me say that we strongly support the policy, and I mean we want to support the point raised by Norway, especially those on knowledge role of the policy. We think this is very important, and on this regard, I want to come back to what said by Aparna. I mean, the operational focal point. I mean, this can be a very important instrument for them for a learning. So I think they should be included. We also would like to see included the lesson learned, and because I mean this is also one of the essential points. And I agree with Franz. What happens if there are problems? And I mean it's important to have a distinction on reporting and achieving results. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think the Martha is the last speaker.
Gracias, Presidenta. Simplemente para decirle que coincide.
Thank you. Just to say that we agree with what Aparna proposes, that maybe we could review this and see how to include all of these issues and the operational focal points. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So let me invite Francois and the team to handle those very enthusiastic, serious, and good interest questions on this policy. Francois?
Thank you very much, Chair.
And let me first express appreciation for the support that was shared and also for the vast interest, which I find gratifying on a topic that can be cut and dry, but where the abundance of reaction and suggestions is really heartening to us after the amount of consultation and efforts that have led to the preparation of this policy. Let me try to do justice to some of these questions, and I hope not to miss any in the process, but there was some gathering of main themes, I would say. Let me start perhaps with a fundamental one, which is there alignment between this monitoring policy as proposed and the evaluation policy that you will discuss tomorrow under the leadership of IEO? That's obviously critical, given that we previously had a joint policy. It was a consensus during the preparation phase as we worked together that there was benefit to separating it this time around, if nothing else because of the extent of other policy development that had happened on the side of the Secretariat, which required to really carefully navigate the interface between the monitoring policy and all the other monitoring requirements already defined in policy. That said, we worked side by side and made sure at every junction that there would be perfect compatibility, and we very much hope that we can, at this point, guarantee it. So that's one fundamental question. Let me address the issue of the role of OFP, which is also a very fundamental question. It is, as several of you observed, one that is not explicit in the policy, but it is one that is mentioned in a document that we presented in December, which we have used to support extensive consultation and engagement with OFPs via the ECW that we conduct on a regular basis in order to modify the role and responsibility around the issue of monitoring. So let me be more explicit. The document we produced in December, Practical Steps to Improve Coordination and Workflow in the GEF Partnership, went into specific description of there's a box in there even that describes what an OFP is under the GEF partnership culture is open to asking from agencies. And this has led to numerous debates, including some very interesting experiences that were shared in ECWs. I was there in Kigali and I was there in Ulaanbaatar, where both times the topics were brought, where countries stepped forward and gave the example of how they proactively manage the monitoring and implementation process with agencies by calling annual monitoring events in which they bring in the agencies to report on the portfolio, by taking close attention to what's being produced. So what I'm trying to say here is, even though there's no mandate, and it hasn't been a tradition in the GEF, in the monitoring policy to actually mechanically close that loop, there is, of course, an interest in that loop being closed, and we consider that the role of the OFP is to make sure that this conversation happens with agency on a timing and periodicity and level of granularity, which is really for the OFP to define in each country as part of the country strategy. It is entirely in the right of the OFP to do that, and of the country to do it in the format that matches the country interest and culture. And I think everybody understands that even the agencies are happy to answer the call if it is properly structured. So the way we have it right now in that document is left to the initiative of the OFP. We have relayed that message extensively with OFPs as we engage with them. We have answered along those lines to validate that indeed this information should be shared, that discussion should happen on implementation. And what we're doing at the system level, on request of OFPs, which was anticipated and we're very happy to support, in fact, is making sure that access to our portal will be granted to OFPs. It is not the case yet, but is going to be the case very imminently, because we're finally getting to the stage of migration where it is possible, in order for them to be able to access all of the information concerning their country, which is available in our system, whether pertaining to preparation to the identification stage, or whether pertaining to implementation. So that offer has reached a lot of support across OFPs. I think it is likely to happen within the next couple of months as we pursue and further the rollout of our portal system. And from then on, OFPs will be in a situation to really validate the same vision as we see from the inside. And that is a very important point, because currently it's not necessarily the case. OFPs rely on the information provided by OFPs or by agencies or by the GEF to know the status of their GEF portfolio within the GEF, which is, I would tend to say, unacceptable, because it doesn't provide them equal information. So that is underway, and this will extend to the implementation module, meaning that they will be able to see what has been submitted by agencies at all stages of the process. So that's the plan on the role of OFPs at this stage. Let me address another fundamental issue, which is that of results, how we capture it, and how the monitoring report will do justice to Council's appetite for achieved results, which obviously we share and we want to enable. We should be able, in due course, to compare expected results to achieved results. We, of course, cannot do it before achieved results, which are essentially outcome-based, are produced, and therefore there's a time constraint on when we can start comparing expected results to achieved results, but it is absolutely part of our intent to do that. So what does it mean in practice? When can you see them? Because I know the question is there, right? Any project that validated or approved by Council in GEF 7 will not reach the stage of producing achieved results in reporting before midterm evaluation, which presumably will be at least 3 years down the road, right? So within the next 3 years, because these results are not achieved yet, we cannot report to you on them, and it's as mechanical as that, right? Now, because we know there's impatience to draw lessons from achieved results and to compare expected and achieved results, impatience that we share, we have managed, when we put in place the GEF 7 result framework, to create and to maintain a pathway between what used to be the measure of results previously, global environment benefits, and the core indicators under the new framework. And that allows us, actually, to take into account achieved results for GEF 6 projects, which, of course, will come earlier, because they all have been approved and they're all moving into implementation now. So our estimate is our first achieved results will be captured in the portal by agencies at the time of midterm review and shared with you and compared to expected results by around 18 months from now. And then in an increasing flow, we will capture the integrality of GEF 6 projects as results come in, right? As to GEF 7, all expected results will be eventually compared to achieved results, but of course the constraint is time for implementation and time for realization of those results, right? It does not make sense to capture results before midterm review, because usually the picture is too preliminary. So we will capture them at midterm and we'll capture them at terminal evaluation. So again, the intent is absolutely to capture them. We will bring them in to the reporting mechanism as soon as we have them. The first time we'll have it is around 18 months for GEF 6, and ultimately we'll have them for all of GEF 7 projects. Another question that was asked was, amounts to readiness for implementation in general of this policy. Questions were raised about templates, guidelines, and deadlines. In other words, when do we get what that enables the process of actually making this alive once it's approved by Council, hopefully. All right, so on this, first, on the templates, because the policy is proposed for effectiveness on the 1st of July, it is necessary to have the template in place to start working right away on new projects within the new policies. And for that reason, templates are very largely in place. I'm saying very largely because if we notice some discrepancy or some imperfection, we can still fix it. But they are in place, they are programmed in our portal. The agencies, of course, have been associated way back to the process of modifying what we call between them and us the implementation module of the portal, which defined the data to be entered. There was due consideration given along the way to simplification, but also collecting the necessary data, which is indispensable to establishing accountability and to reporting back to Council with useful metrics, right? So I'm not saying that it was a simplification in terms of narrowing down the data that is required for monitoring, but certainly there was care and exchange with agencies over the cost and the cumbersome nature of that exchange. And what has been agreed is we expect should enable us to secure accountability, report in an informed way to Council so that it can inform substantiated discussions over what the monitoring report distillates as message, right? And yet be feasible for agencies. So every single field has been checked for feasibility of agencies. We have not added a burden of collecting data that wasn't already collected, and all of that is already programmed in the implementation module of our portal. It can start on the 1st of July if needed. Now, as to guidelines on how to add a level of granularity to how to do this well, they will need to be produced, and they will be probably done in the next 6 months, I would expect, as a function of the conversation that we need to have to make this level of granularity more precise. If at that point we notice that something has to change at the level of template, which is a living document within the portal, this, of course, can be done. So essentially, that's the time frame on which we're operating currently. The guidelines required for reporting on GEF 7 projects will not be required before GEF 7 projects actually report, right? So the policy would be effective on the 1st of July for new GEF 7 projects. For the portfolio, which is already approved, there would be a year of adaptation. It's effective for the portfolio only a year from now, so the guidelines are not required right away for the portfolio. Before any agency has any obligation to report on existing GEF 7 projects under the new policy, we would have produced guidelines. So what I'm trying to give you the detail of here is production guideline is not in the way of effectiveness in any way, or in the way of agencies getting done what they have to do under the policy. It's been planned and designed for that result precisely. So we consider that the policy, if the effectiveness dates are conserved as they stand, is implementation ready, and that the portal is as well as of today. There was question about reporting on programs, or more specifically, the question came as the need to report on IPs. Well, there is, under the policy, reporting on programs, which happens for all programs, and IPs are programs, so they fall under the overall determination of program reporting. And the way it works, as you will have noticed, is that the lead agency has a responsibility for reporting on the dimensions that are specific to the program, not at the project level. Agencies will report at the project level. The Secretary will aggregate project level information so that we can present to you a view of how collectively the projects under this program are performing. But the lead agency will report on the dimensions which are specific to the ambition of the program. It can involve the knowledge dimension, the knowledge platform. It can involve the engagement of non-standard stakeholders in that discussion. It can involve the pursuit of results that are more systemic in nature that the IP or the program has endeavored to do at either the regional level or the global level or the systemic level. And those aspects will require further definition in guidelines. So there will be guidelines for programs that will be produced, likely on the same time frame, in order to enable reporting on that new dimension. This is new, and this is new as well in the evaluation policy of IEO, and will enable reporting to not just look at child projects as projects, but also to look at programs as entities that have a higher ambition in terms of accomplishment and bring these projects together. So that's the question of program evaluation. On the learning link, which is a very important question, how do we link evaluation, reporting, and learning? It is quite clear that more has to happen. There was a brief mention of learning in the previous monitoring and evaluation policy, but it was descriptive in nature, not normative in nature. And so we considered at the time that it was not adding value as described, if you will, and that the whole issue of how learning can be gathered and unleashed across the partnership for further impact is one that in many ways requires more work. So we agree it requires more work. There has been extensive consultations with agencies around the time of the definition of templates, for instance, on reporting at the project implementation report level, at the midterm level, and the consensus at the time was that because every agency has different way of reporting back on learning, for instance, on lesson learned, they had a preference for continuing to do what is currently the norm in the partnership, which is that each agency reports on midterm review along its own format. This to say that, of course, as they report in midterm review and in terminal evaluation, there is abundant information captured on lesson learned. The issue is we do not have yet a way to mobilize that in an easy way, if you will, a system way that would allow us to distillate that more generally throughout the partnership. I think it's a goal that we should have. It is one that requires a lot of collaboration, that requires further understanding and consultation with agencies on how to do this without imposing an additional reporting burden on them, but by maybe uplifting what they're already doing. Now, the information itself is available, of course, through the MTRs, which are public, and through the terminal evaluation, which are public, right? So the question is more how we could, by injecting in this further work, find a way of extracting that for other membership members' consumption, which, of course, is a very important point. Now, it doesn't mean, of course, we don't do it at all, because we have many activities that are gathered around knowledge management that are endeavoring to do exactly that. And so the question is one of calibrating the level of effort, the resources injected, the ambition of that mechanics, and the cost imposed on agencies to go above and beyond their existing systems in capturing in a common platform the same information. And so that's a challenge to look into further. Now, another point this brought into your questions under learning was the issue of what happened with midterm evaluation and what happened with situations where there is gathering at the time of reporting to council about issues of either compliance or performance, right? So this one is not an ex post evaluation issue, but it's very much an issue of adaptive management of the portfolio of the GEF. On this one, so that question was raised by a number of you under the form of essentially how do we enforce or how do we make sure there's response and reaction when an issue is located through the activity of reporting. Now, on this one, I would say that the fundamental role and responsibility right now is that accountability lies with agencies to address issues of project implementation that have been identified. Therefore, any agency that encounters in a midterm review that there is a problem with project implementation that threatens the possibility of reaching the development impact of the project is expected to take diligent action for course correction in order to make sure that the ratings of the project as it comes, its potential sustainability, or simply its implementation smoothness is corrected, right? The role of the Secretariat as it stands right now is to have an effective system to capture detailed metrics that will empower a council upon reporting, upon annual reporting, to take a look at the comparative performance in implementation of various members of the partnership. It is something that can be looked at the country level, it is something that can be looked at the agency level, and it is something that can be looked at functionally across the partnership. Are MTRs reported upon in a diligent and sufficient way? We shared data before to say it wasn't to our satisfaction, and the mechanics that we brought to Council to deal with such an issue is, in this case, for instance, to adopt a different agency fee schedule that would incentivize the submission of MTR. This happened in December, right? So the fundamental mechanic, in answer to the question, what's the enforcement mechanism, is for us to collect and report to Council on useful metrics, that's the annual reporting tool, in such a way that Council can share with us the concern that may arise across the partnership about certain dimensions that are not effectively handled, and consider for approval whatever remedial action or consequences might be in order, given what we have analyzed. For the time being, we're not at the Secretariat level empowered to go beyond that, and that's the commitment that we have, to actually shape this instrument, to make it useful for Council consideration, to make sure that it is an instrument that allows diagnostic of issues of efficiency, effectiveness we might have across the partnership, and then to suggest, as may be required for your approval, remedial actions and consequences that might be in order. The approval in December of a range of actions that hardened the cancellation policy, that changed the fee schedule of agency payments, that created a deadline for program commitments, for instance, all of those are the mechanics through which we try and respond to observations that stem from the function of monitoring and reporting. So that's the general direction that we could suggest. We value, of course, the learning and the exchange with CSOs. We use every instrument we have through the country support program to make sure that, as we discuss with country-level delegations, CSOs are involved. We have changed the format within the expanded constituency workshops of the CSO day to make sure that there's much more empowerment of discussions around CSO interaction within the partnership. We have done the same under your guidance with the vision piece to make sure that we all make the best out of the voice, experience, and presence of CSOs in our council meeting, which is what happened yesterday with the council day on the CSO day on plastics, which many of you attended. And we therefore are very much committed to take inputs as we receive them and to expand opportunities to dialogue and exchange, both around the substance of what we're doing and, of course, around the rules and guidelines under which we function. I think that probably covers most of the groups of questions that I have identified. I mean, I'm sure that I'm missing some of the more detailed ones, so if anybody feels it hasn't been answered, it's not out of bad will, you can come back.
Does it cover NGO?
Yes.
Oh, NGO, yes.
Maybe you could just give me one moment.